This is a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
I'm Tony Bruschi. Thanks for joining us. We're now going to take you to the courtroom today to hear Becky Hill's testimony, specifically regarding allegations of jury tampering in the murder trial of Alex Murdaugh. Take a listen.
You were asked about whether or not you had texted some people, this won't be long. Was that at all in any way based on any conversation you had with a juror as to their internal thinking or anything like that? Or was that just your assessment being an experienced person in the court?
Absolutely not.
It was based on just your assessments?
Just my assessments, yes.
Did you ever communicate with the jurors on how long they would be, or did any juror ever tell you how long they thought they would be?
I never talked to any jurors about anything like that.
You were asked about your book, and I don't want to get into too much detail about that, but you were asked about some of the assertions that you made in the book. And you were asked if these were lies. Were they lies, or were they ultimately things that were based on inferences from newspapers and community stories?
You are leading by, this is your witness, Mr. Waters, so please ask a direct question.
Thank you. Some of the statements that you were asked about in your book, were they lies, or were they based on your inferences from just general community knowledge and things that you had researched and knew?
Still leading, but I'm not going to object.
All right.
Thank you.
He's right about that, Mr. Waters. Just ask a direct question.
Did you lie in your book?
No, I did not.
Thank you. You were asked about when you told the jury to pay attention. When you asked that question, did you also mention anything about, we got coffee for you, or things like that?
I knew that Mr. Bill would take care of that. And the jurors knew too. Coffee, we had done some Dunkin' Donut runs. We had provided coffee, different other things to help stay awake in the cold courtroom that we found ourselves in. And so I knew anything that they needed, Mr. Bill would see that they got, because that's what he did.
At any time, did you have any conversation with any juror in which you tried to influence their decision?
I did not have a conversation with any juror about anything related to this case.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Hill? I want you to turn your attention to a hearing that Judge Newman had about the alternate who was dismissed, sometimes called the egg juror. Do you recall that hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
In the hearing, Judge Newman expressed his unhappiness with you for questioning that juror before he questioned her. Do you recall that?
I do remember seeing that.
Well, then let's go back and talk about that juror. On examination in this courtroom, you said that she talked about a lot of things to you, but you didn't ask her any questions. But that's not completely accurate, is it?
Yes, ma'am, that is true.
Well, you asked her direct questions, and that came out in the hearing that Judge Newman had. You asked her questions before she was even examined by the judge, did you not?
Your Honor, I did not ask her any questions.
the juror was examined by the judge in a hearing. Do you recall that hearing? It's the second hearing on this matter.
I do recall that hearing, yes.
And the court asked you about, the court asked this juror about postings on Facebook, did he not?
Correct.
And the juror said she gave Miss Becky my full access to my Facebook. And I put positive posts on it. I've done that for the past 3 years. Do you recall her testifying in that regard?
I do remember reading that.
And the judge said, has anyone posted anything on Facebook about you? And the juror answered, I was not aware of it until Miss Becky told me today. Do you recall that?
I do remember her saying that.
And do you recall the judge saying, what did she tell me? And the juror said, she asked me if I had an ex-husband, and I said, yeah. Did you ask her that?
I remember her saying this, Your Honor, but I did not ask her any of these questions.
And she further says, she asked me if I had talked to him about the case or being on jury duty, and I said no. I had questioned her about why she was asking me that. I haven't seen my husband since 2014. Do you recall her testifying to that?
I do remember that, yes.
And with that, having jarred your memory, do you recall asking her about her husband and his post?
Your Honor, I don't remember saying anything about that.
Well, what was the post that you read in the Walterboro Word of mouth? What was the nature? You read that, did you not?
I did.
What did it say?
My memory is a little fuzzy with that, but it was about a ex-husband who found out that his ex-wife was on a jury, and he didn't think that she would be a good juror, and it just sounded very similar to what I had heard the judge and the attorneys speaking about.
So you then went to that juror and questioned her about that, did you not?
I did not, Your Honor.
Well, she says in this testimony that she didn't know about the Facebook until Miss Becky told me. Was that incorrect?
I'm not saying...
Some kind of conversation went between the two of her for her to know about that post, correct?
That's true. And I'm thinking that it could have been someone, it wasn't me, I just know that it's not me that she talked to about that.
Well, when the judge, the judge was questioning the juror about this, she also said that she had 3 restraining orders against him. And she also said, I was very upset after she told me that. Like I said, I have 3 restraining orders against him, and I wouldn't have anything to do with him if I didn't have a child with him. But I haven't seen him since 2014. Y'all didn't discuss that, the restraining orders?
On the way from the jury room to the back chambers where the judge was, she was very scared. She was talking about the 3 restraining orders that she had out on her husband at the time that they were divorcing, and she was scared that he would be trying to get back in contact with her again.
Well, how do you know that? Did she tell you that?
She was talking about that on the way to the jury room, to the chambers with the judge.
And in the court, in this hearing now that I'm looking at, that the court is conducting, she said, they're asking about this Facebook post, and she said, Miss Becky said she went to look for the post again and that it had been deleted. I don't know who she talked to or anything else, but she said apparently, do you recall her saying that?
I do remember her saying that.
And the court then said, what did she tell you about that? And the juror said, it was after you let us go on the last break. I was very upset. This is what you're talking about. And she came down and talked to me and said that apparently, I don't know who talked to him, but he said he was drunk and he removed the post. Do you recall that?
Well, she didn't tell me that, and I didn't talk with her about that.
Well, you saw that post, the so-called apology post, did you not?
Right, I did.
And you assumed that was a post from her husband, did you not?
Right.
And then you talked to the juror about that, did you not?
I did not talk with the juror about that.
Well, who did you talk to about it? Did you bring it to the judge's attention?
No, we didn't get a chance to talk to the judge about that.
The court asked this juror, has the clerk discussed anything about the case with anyone on the jury? The juror said, not that I'm aware of. The judge said, okay, she was just discussing with juror. She pulled me aside when we went downstairs after the last break. I want to say it was after lunch, and we came back, and that's when she first told me about it, about this, what we now know was not a post from her husband.
Right.
But you assumed it was a post at the time, and y'all had a conversation about it, correct? Don't that just nod. Answer the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I believe that it was one of my staff that she talked to, but it was not me that she talked to.
But the juror says, and I want to say it was after lunch we came back, and that's when she first told me about it. She's talking about you.
Correct.
Then we went back into the court, and I never even got to sit on the jury. The judge says, the judge then stops the questioning and she exits the room. Mr. Griffin, Your Honor, I think that satisfies it. She hadn't talked to anybody, hadn't expressed an opinion, hadn't made up an opinion. She's got an ex-husband and she has 3 restraining orders against him. The court said, Mr. Waters, just obviously we're all invested in this. My main concern, I certainly would love to, but not love to, but would want to hear, what one of these individuals said. But, she answered the questions as she did, talking about the juror. They then have a colloquy about this juror and whether this was really her husband that put this post in that you talked to her about and apparently talked with the court about at some point. Am I right?
That's right.
And then at the end, the judge said that he was not too happy with your having talked to the juror before you talked to him. Do you recall the judge saying that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And did you pop right up there and say what you're saying now, that you never talked to her?
We never talked about it after that. I wasn't in the room when he said that.
The judge brought up another thing right after sentencing that I want to explore with you briefly.
Okay.
One of the big responsibilities of the clerk of court is to take control of the exhibits that are presented in court. Isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And there were sealed exhibits presented in this case that were photographs of the 2 decedents at Moselle when the law enforcement authorities first investigated the murders. You recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And those photographs were sealed by the judge, were they not?
Correct.
And when the testimony about them was completed, they were under your control as the clerk of court, were they not?
That's correct.
How was it that those photographs came into public view?
Are you talking about after the...
I'm talking about the fact he alluded to it on sentencing and said that he was frustrated about it and was going to try to look into it. Those photographs that were sealed court exhibits under your control found their way into the public media, did they not?
I believe they did. And I think what happened, it was someone from the gallery took a picture from a screen that had some of the pictures on it, if I'm remembering correctly.
Did you ever allow anyone from the press to view these sealed exhibits?
No, ma'am.
Did you allow Netflix to ever examine the exhibits for trial?
No, ma'am.
How did you handle exhibits? Because you did have the press have great access to the exhibits, and you say several times in your book that you had to stay after to be sure that you interacted with the press about these exhibits. That's true, is it not?
That is true. We had Mr. J. Bender, and then we had the pool photographers and someone from maybe the state, I believe, or the Posting Courier, along with the court reporters, someone from court administration, and then someone from the clerk's office every night that would go over the exhibits to make sure everything was correct and within our domain.
Were any press people ever allowed to view the exhibits, even the sealed exhibits that you had on file?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
What was the methodology for allowing them to examine the exhibits? How'd you handle that?
I wasn't there a whole lot when we did this every night, but it's my understanding that the people that were involved with the exhibits, and especially the court reporters, and there was a certain time frame that they were allowed to take their pictures, and everything was, all of the pictures were looked at by the court reporters that were there and the lady from court administration, along with someone from my office and Mr. J. Bender, to make sure that everything was done correctly.
What I'm asking is how you handled having them, the press, view these exhibits.
If I remember correctly, the press, we had certain designated photographers and then someone, I think, from the state or the Posting Courier, and they were responsible for putting it out on a stream for the rest of the media to access.
And would they do that by photographing the exhibits as they were in your possession after court was over that day?
That is correct.
All right. And how did you handle the sealed exhibits in terms of their availability when these press people are there photographing exhibits?
They stayed sealed.
And so you think that you're aware of the fact that some of these on-the-scene photographs of the two decedents found their way into the public press. You're aware of that, are you not?
Yes, ma'am, I am, yes.
And you contend that they photographed them in the courtroom?
That is what I heard.
All right. Finally, you have indicated about your book that some things that you put in there were, you called it literary license, not literally true, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever, by any kind of email communication or in any way, shape, or form, indicate or state that you wanted a guilty verdict because it would increase the sales of the book. Did you ever say that in an email or verbally or in any other way?
No, ma'am, I did not. It didn't matter to me if it was guilty, not guilty, or a mistrial.
Well, in your book, you suggest that the guilty verdict was what you wanted, and you were fearful that that a guilty verdict would not be rendered. You say that a lot about your feeling about wanting a guilty verdict, do you not?
I do agree that that is said in the book, and part of that is because I think it was a guilty verdict.
Well, this is that you were describing a time way before the verdict was rendered. When you wrote about those things in the book. Isn't that correct?
It is, yes.
And you even have something where you say your eyes met with jurors and others at Moselle, and y'all had an understanding, unspoken, that he was guilty. You said that in the book, did you not?
I did say that in the book, and I would consider that part of the literary, the word that we just said. But there was nothing spoken with a juror at all at Moselle or anywhere else at the courthouse or anywhere. I think that's part of that poetic license that we write to make something more apparent. But at no time did I read or try to read someone else's eyes, and that was just one of those gut feelings that I wrote in the book.
You wrote in the book, speaking of a time before the jury verdict was rendered, I was conflicted about knowing the Murdaugh family and about having so many people watching and listening to me as I read the verdict. I was mostly concerned about Alex being found innocent when I knew in my heart he was guilty. I had this fear that the goodwill the Murdaughs had built up in the community would influence the jury. You wrote that, did you not?
Yes, ma'am.
So you had those feelings well before the verdict was announced in this case. You had some definite opinions and feelings about what the verdict should be, did you not?
I did have a certain way that I felt.
But I would never... That's not any poetic license, what was said there. That's how you felt, correct?
Correct.
All right. Those are my questions. Anything further from the state, Mr. Waters?
Very briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
You were asked a number of questions about the interactions during the in-camera proceedings with the juror who was excluded. Were you in the room during the entirety of those interactions, or just were brought in here or there as those occurred?
No, I was only brought in for my asking of my questions from Judge Newman.
And you were asked a little bit about sealed exhibits and about Judge Newman's comments at sentencing at the end of trial. And just to clarify, those were not pictures of any sealed exhibits. It was a picture that someone had taken in the gallery that had actually been disclosed, and that's what Judge Newman was talking about, to your understanding?
That was my understanding, yes.
And then after the trial, there was even a post-trial hearing or some discussion about the fact that some body cam videos had not been sealed, and Judge Newman fixed that problem after the trial. Is that correct?
Correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Just a couple questions.
Mr. Harpootlian?
Let me understand this correctly. You would agree that you did release all of the exhibits in this case, sealed and unsealed, to the Texas film crew. Is that correct?
No, sir. No, sir, I did not release the sealed exhibits.
What about to Netflix? Didn't you indicate to the judge they'd been mistakenly released and you're getting them back?
As an error, when we realized everything, yes, those two did go, and Netflix had not even, they said they had not even looked at them.
Did you get them back?
We did get them back, yes.
And what about a Japanese film crew? Did they get exhibits, the sealed exhibits?
They did not get any sealed exhibits.
What about NBC Universal?
No sealed exhibits.
But you do concede that Netflix did get sealed exhibits.
They did it as an error. It wasn't
Whose
listed.
error?
Well, I would say the court reporter didn't mark it on the listing.
Well, why were you so accommodating to these national documentary folks? I mean, is this good for the book? I mean, the more documentaries out there about the Murdaugh thing, the better your book sales are. I mean, there was money in this for you, right? Again, it's about the money, right?
What's your question now?
Isn't it financially beneficial to you at the time to get more of these photographs out, more publicity, more Netflix, more HBOs, more Japanese? Doesn't that sell books for you? Didn't you see a financial advantage?
Not at all.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Hill, you may step down. Let's hang on for a moment. Mr. Lewis.
Is she excused from her subpoena?
I just wanted to make sure she's now excused.
Oh, well, I want her to step down. Yes, she's still under subpoena. I haven't heard what's going to be said. Mr. Harpootlian still has some things he wants to raise about other witnesses and so forth. So what I would prefer is that she remain with you, Mr. Lewis, until we see what else is going to happen. You may step down. All right, Mr. Harpootlian.
Your Honor, we've got literally millions of pages of documents in this case. Ms. Miller just uncovered an email relevant to what you asked. We don't have it printed out. But what it is an email from Rebecca Hill to Miho Takauchi, something. Miho, first name, the Buford McDowell body cam should not have gone to you. Please get rid of it. Do not use it. The Judge Newman, specifically ordered that body cam not be used if it got out. Apparently, it's still on the videos we were saved. I appreciate your attention. What about the other body cam video we could see on many news documentaries? Can you provide it? It seems the camera was on the other police personnel. I mean, here she's having emails between this Japanese production company about body cams telling them to get rid of it. I think that's important, and I can have a copy of this printed out for you when we can get it to a printer for the record.
That would be fine, but do you want to offer it as an exhibit?
I do.
All right, Mr. Waters?
I have no objection. If I could just ask the date of that.
The date is July 17th, 2023. July.
All right, that's one thing. What else? I will admit it. I will allow it. That is a impeachment of her testimony to me that she did not send any emails or release anything.
Yes, Your Honor.
In fact, she changed that testimony on redirect when she said she did, so-called by accident, release some things.
That doesn't appear to be by accident. So we'd like that made part of the record. Secondly, I have sitting outside the courtroom the clerk of court for Barnwell County, Rhonda McElvey. She specifically denied saying certain things to the clerk of court of Barnwell County and denied doing certain things. I think you're going to find her testimony extraordinarily instructive and educational, and it shouldn't take, I would be shocked if it took 20 minutes.
Well, in light of the answers she gave to my questions and some of yours in that regard, I'm going to allow it. Now, I want to know what else we're looking at here.
Do we have only one copy of this?
You have the original.
Your Honor, I want to hand up to you an affidavit from a witness we would propose to provide in addition to clerk of court. This is a alternate juror, not the egg lady. This is the alternate juror who was dismissed when she was not needed for deliberations. And she is here also ready to testify. Testimony would take about the same time as one of those jurors this morning.
Sir?
I would expect her testimony would take about as much time as one of those jurors this morning.
This is your offer in refutation of the testimony Ms. Hill has given today?
She denied saying any
She
of this.
denies saying anything. That's correct.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, is this juror, alternate juror, going to testify?
She's here. Yes, Your Honor. She's sitting.
Well, you just say she's here. She's available.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Waters.
Your Honor, a couple things on this particular alternate juror. We've just been handed this particular affidavit. Your Honor, I believe that Your Honor had correctly ruled that the focus again was on those jurors, and the inquiry has been made to those particular jurors. I don't know why we would go into detail with an alternate juror that ultimately did not sit in any deliberations and cannot testify as to any effect on the verdict, which is the ultimate inquiry before Your Honor. And so we would object to this particular testimony as far as it relates to the alternate juror.
Here's the one thing that gives me some heartburn, and you can help me with this, please. I stand by the rulings I have made that only jurors can be questioned about the effect on their verdict. And that is why I did not allow the testimony of the egg juror in that regard. He is now offering this testimony, and it's testimony of certain things that were said to the jurors as a whole, rather than just to this particular juror. And I would, as I say, I would ordinarily not allow this, but Ms. Hill testified several times during the course of her just concluded appearance that she never told any jurors anything along the lines of what has been asked here, particularly the comments about they're going to say things that will try to confuse you or throw you off, things of that nature. She was asked about that, and she denied she ever said anything like that. So this is an attempt to impeach as I see it, and that's what's giving me a little heartburn about just turning him down flat.
Well, a couple things as to that, Your Honor. First of all, I think that we have some very specific statements and a specific individual that's mentioned here. And so if we're looking at Rule 613B, which is essentially where they're operating, I don't know that there was an appropriate foundation laid as to the specific time and to whom these specific statements were made. I think that it needed to be cleaner with regards to that as to mentioning this particular person and as much as you can, the time and place, and the very specific statements that were made. I think Mr. Harpootlian, again, we had these general allegations and kind of went through those, but I don't know that now that we've just been handed this affidavit, that they were set forth as an appropriate clarity that's required by 613B. So I think there's a failure there.
Mr. Waters, look for a minute at paragraph 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those paragraphs all address things that have been asked her, and they are pretty specific as to time and place. And the content of this testimony is an attempt to impeach her, Ms. Hill's testimony. That's why as I guess colloquially I said, I'm having a little heartburn about excluding this, is because she was asked directly about these matters, and this testimony would be in conflict with that, which would be permitted to impeach someone.
Right. And Your Honor, I certainly understand the point. I guess I would have just 2 points to that. Number one is that, as we've already talked about, this evidentiary hearing is within your discretion in the manner, particularly when you're talking about jurors and the manner to be conducting that. Now we're talking about putting a juror on the stand and having attorney examination. And I think under the case law, that's within your discretion as to how that inquiry should go, as opposed to were we purely in a trial setting and applying the evidentiary rules. But if we were applying the evidentiary rules, again, strictly applied, I think that I don't know that they have laid the foundation with enough clarity to offer extrinsic evidence under 613B, and that would be our argument there, that we just had generally discussion of some of these concepts, but not the place, time, and person to whom it was made with the specificity that 613B requires. So that would be our evidentiary objection in the event that Your Honor is addressing those. So that would be our position. I do also, before we get started, I do want to go back and address the sealed exhibits issue whenever it's appropriate.
Sure.
If it's now, I'm happy to go.
Mr. Harpootlian? Slow for a minute. I'm turning to Mr. Waters to try to get some clarity about why he objects to this testimony. One is the 613 issue that he's explored, and I understand that. He now wants to say something about the sealed exhibits. So I want to hear from him on that, and then you can reply to both of them.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
That's all right.
Distracted by Mr. Barber.
Sure, I understand.
And finally, going back to the juror issue, we would also raise 403 as well, just because of the nature of the inquiry that we're here to assess. Going back to the sealed exhibits, I just want to clarify for Your Honor, Mr. Griffin and Mr. Harpootlian were at this hearing. After the trial, there was a release of, and these were publicly filed exhibits, of a number of exhibits. What also got released at the time were 2 body cam exhibits, which had images of the victims at the scene. Those had inadvertently not been marked as sealed exhibits, and ultimately then we had a hearing in front of Judge Newman, and essentially those were clawed back. And so I just want to be clear that when we're having testimony about that particular thing, as it relates to what Ms. Hill was saying, those were the sealed exhibits that were released. And again, at the time, they had not been marked sealed, and that was sort of retroactively fixed. And then the other issue, of course, is, Your Honor, is again that the issue that Judge Newman was talking about after sentencing was a gallery photo. It was not a what apparently would be maybe a press photo of the exact exhibits. And what we did at trial, and Mr. Harpootlian can speak to this, and Mr. Bender could as well, is at the end of each day, first of all, the sealed exhibits would have a cover sheet or a folder that they would be in, and then they would verify with the parties that these are the okay exhibits, these are the sealed exhibits, and then at that point, after court was concluded, the media would then be allowed to review and or photograph or get copies of the unsealed exhibits. So that's just how the procedure was working at the trial.
That's very helpful to clarify this, because I now see this in perspective that the materials that were photographs at the scene or depictions at the scene of the 2 victims, what you're telling me is that those were inadvertently released after the trial by I guess it would have to be by the clerk of court. She's the one that had them. And then they weren't properly marked. And they were then clawed back.
Yeah, they were the two body cam videos, and so in those videos, it weren't physical images, but they were the body cam videos, and then in those videos you could see the victims at the scene.
Right.
And those two exhibits, to my recollection, were the only two that should have been sealed, but they, in fairness, were not marked sealed, and that's how they got released. The second we realized it was a problem, we took care of it and clawed those back.
Well, that clarifies that issue for me, so frankly, that puts my mind at ease about what happened there. Now, Mr. Harpootlian, I'll come to you momentarily. Anything else?
No, ma'am, Your Honor.
Okay, now, Mr. Harpootlian.
A couple of things I'd point out. The first is this, in terms of the statement by this alternate juror. She was interviewed by SLED on video, said exactly the same thing as she's saying in this affidavit weeks, if not months ago. So they know exactly what she said. I can assume they reviewed it. By the way, I asked, basically read from this affidavit as I cross-examined the clerk, and she denied each one of these statements. The second piece of that is this.
I know. It's on that basis that I'm even pursuing the idea of your offering something by way of impeachment. So I understand that.
And secondly, as to the sealed exhibits, I think we're going to hear testimony from Ms. McElveen that may elaborate on your concerns based on our interview with her this morning.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. It's about 3 minutes of 3, which is when I generally take my afternoon break. I'm going to adjourn the court or recess the court, and we come back at 3:15. And I will allow you to offer Ms. McElveen and the alternate. I want to make it clear that they will be offered on what we've talked about, matters about which Ms. Hill testified that you think are impeached by Ms. McElveen's testimony and that you think are impeached by the alternate juror's testimony. So and the alternate juror's testimony, as I look at it, is the part about which impeachment would lie would begin at paragraph 3.
Yes, ma'am. I have that now.
So do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. Can I make you one other offer?
Yes, sir.
Today and today only. Egg Lady is across the street.
Well,
No. If you want to put her on the stand.
No. I've made my position quite clear about that. I think we've got in the record what is needed in terms of what she says, Ms. Hill says, and what Ms. Hill says she says.
I agree. We did not intend on calling her. I just didn't want you to miss the opportunity if you wanted the opportunity to examine her.
Thank you, Mr. Harpootlian. All right, court will be in recess until 3:15.
That's a testimony of Becky Hill today in the hearing of Alex Murdaugh regarding allegations of jury tampering. There's more to come. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.
This has been a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.